The Catholic Church in Wales is in turmoil, with 2 of its priests jailed for child abuse. Now the Archbishop in charge is being accused of failing to stop the crimes.
He's shown on many occasions that he's incompetent. I think he's unfit for office.
Tonight, Panorama uncovers disturbing evidence of how the Catholic leader in Wales ignored serious warnings about his paedophile priests. This is the man charged with the care of the Catholic faith in Wales, Archbishop John Aloysius Ward. Here he plays host to an annual meeting of priests from across Britain, the first time it's been held in Wales. Now 71, John Ward has been in the priesthood for all of his adult life, and he's been Archbishop of Cardiff for 17 years. He's now one of the longest-serving archbishops in Britain.
Brother priests, welcome to Wales. I hope you won't find the air too pure.
But what has been happening here is anything but pure. The Church has been rocked by the revelation that priests have been abusing children in their care. Families have been devastated that the man they trusted most and invited into their homes, their local priest, could have betrayed them in this way. Now they want answers about how the Church could have let this happen.
This man was allowed to become a priest at a time when the Church's vetting system should have been at its most rigorous. This isn't a man who was ordained 20 or 30 years ago when there wasn't media attention on paedophiles, when it wasn't spoken about. This is a man who was recently ordained, and this is what hurts.
Hello there. How are you?
The families want the Church to take responsibility for what has happened.
Hello there.
The Archbishop of Cardiff admits mistakes have been made, but he says he did everything he could.
How are you? Okay? Good.
You look back and you would handle things differently. But as far as I'm concerned, as far as I understood things, I acted appropriately and in good faith.
But our investigation has revealed a very different picture. It's a picture of a church which has ignored repeated warnings over many years and missed opportunities to stop paedophile priests abusing children. The questions and accusations point directly to the man in charge, the Archbishop of Cardiff himself. Our story begins here in Chepstow on the Welsh border. Through much of the 80s and early 90s, its parish priest was Father John Lloyd. Becoming a close colleague and advisor to the Archbishop, he doubled up as the church press officer. He was also an abuser of women and children. He particularly targeted altar boys. He selected certain favourite ones, carefully befriending them, preparing them for abuse.
It was very natural the way he went about it. He used to spar and sort of have these sort of play fights with all of his altar servers. There was something quite endearing about that. A priest sort of bashing altar boys about was sort of a bit maverick, and it sort of built up a friendship that you wouldn't expect usually from an authority figure. The weekday mass might finish. There'd be the procedure of putting away the vestments and the dishes and what have you. And there'd be the play fights, and from there, when the physical contact had been established, he'd move on to the indecent assaults.
Lloyd was supremely confident he would never be caught. He enjoyed abusing with the trappings of his religion around him, brazenly assaulting his chosen altar boys in the sacristy before and after Mass. This victim, like others, felt trapped.
Lloyd knew full well the type of personalities he was dealing with. I mean, I was probably more withdrawn than most at that age anyway. A lot of teenagers are. And he could count on my silence.
There were, though, some in the congregation who, while they knew nothing about Lloyd's sexual abuse, were concerned about his bullying character. They took the difficult step of complaining about their priest. In Chepstow, Lloyd was the subject of a series of letters of complaints from parishioners, letters that were sent directly to the Archbishop. They were written in the strictest confidence, but Archbishop Ward had an extraordinary way of dealing with them.
They were returned to Lloyd, which always struck me as being the most absurd situation, presumably for Lloyd to act on them. But what in fact happened, what in reality happened, was that Lloyd used them to terrorise the people who had written them. He would wave these letters and he would say, "I have told you. It's no point you writing to him because he sends these letters back to me."
But didn't anybody ask questions about that? The fact that Archbishop Ward was sending these complaints, these letters
Nobody
back to Lloyd
asks
himself?
questions about anything. This is the problem here.
And it was never raised?
No.
Even as these letters were waved before the congregation?
This madness was always accepted as the norm.
It was a madness which had terrible results. Parishioners were unwilling to complain further, and Lloyd's behaviour continued. He was, in fact, a serial abuser of women, girls and boys, assaults which stretched back years to his time in a previous parish in the Welsh Valleys. At the same time, Lloyd was trusted to speak for the Church on one of the most critical issues of the day, celibacy.
The whole idea of clerical celibacy is a very important one. It comes from the 5th century. And we all have our difficulties. We all have to cope. But I think if a priest spends time in prayer, spends time trying to be faithful, trying to be a follower of Christ, then perhaps you can cope.
But the thoughtful church spokesman would not be the only practising paedophile within the ranks of Archbishop Ward's priesthood in Wales. Just a year later, in 1994, the Archbishop was to meet and take a liking to a man who would turn out to be the second paedophile priest, Joe Jordan. Jordan was a form master and English teacher in this school in Doncaster in the late 80s. In his class, the smallest boy was also his favourite, Tony Smith. Jordan used his skills with computers and sports to entice Tony, a technique he was to repeat in later years. He exploited one minor incident to assault his favourite pupil. Tony complained to him that his back hurt after playing rugby. Jordan lied and said he was a qualified physiotherapist and suggested they go back to his house for treatment.
I started massaging my legs and massaging it, obviously, to my buttocks, cheeks and my buttocks. And then he said, "Turn over." And I was like, "Why?" I'll do, yeah, front of your legs. I started doing it front of my legs, and he went to touch me and grabbed my hand and tried to make me touch him. But I pulled my hand away and I was very frightened. I couldn't say no. But I said I wanted to go home and to me parents.
Tony was scared and tried to get away, but the touching was to get worse and far more shocking as Jordan grew bolder.
And I was pulling my trousers up, and he actually pushed me down and jumped on top of me, which I was very, very frightened then, because a very big man, a 11-year-old, I'm on this size, and he basically stroking me head saying, "I wish you were my son, I wish you were my son, I love you to bits." I was only a young boy at the time, and to trust a man, somebody who I looked up to that way, and gutted me deep inside.
But Jordan had gone too far. Tony went to the police and they discovered other children who claimed they'd been abused by Jordan. Tony was one of several to go to court for Jordan's trial. In the end, he was found not guilty, a teacher's word against a boy's. But the school authorities were so worried they conducted their own investigation and significantly were not prepared to let Jordan return. He resigned, but then found another vocation. 5 weeks later, he turned up in Plymouth for interview to become a priest. At the selection board, he made a show of telling them about the Doncaster case.
He'd been broken by that. That's our perception of him. And somehow this had caused quite a spiritual renewal in his life. And so that's how he presented himself to the parish priest, that's how he came through to the vocations director, and I think that's how he came through also to the selection board.
So what did he tell you about that Doncaster case?
He was very upfront with it. You know, he'd been actually accused by one of the pupils of indecent assault, and he'd gone to court, and the case had been discharged or, been acquitted. I forget the exact words he used, but, obviously he'd been found not guilty.
But you hadn't checked the background to the case?
We didn't check the background of the case, no. I have a regret about him not being properly sussed out at that stage.
It was a major mistake, wasn't it? Even then?
Yeah, not sure. I wouldn't call it major. It was a lapse, I think, of diligence, if you like.
So Jordan moved on. After this, the first missed opportunity to uncover him. He was sent as a student priest to the very heart of the Catholic Church in Rome. So he was a man who glided easily through the selection and vetting procedure in Plymouth and came out with flying colours to arrive here in Rome to train to become a priest. All because no one had fully checked his background. But there was another safeguard, another opportunity to stop this paedophile in his tracks. Annual reports compiled during a 6-year course which were designed to assess whether Joe Jordan was suitable to become a Roman Catholic priest. But how well would Joe Jordan assume the role of a conventional priest, mingling among men of deep faith? We've spoken to many of his colleagues. They recall a student who stood out from the rest. Jordan was very different from the usual image of a man with devout Christian beliefs. Fellow students tell of a man with an abusive manner, which he revealed even in the presence of the college rector.
Joe introduced the topic of conversation to the table on homosexuality by referring to another student as a shit stabber. Some of the students on the table laughed. I think I was stunned into silence, as was the rector. He never said anything, none of us did. And I was quite disturbed by that a table of 7 men, adults, Christians, supposedly men training to be priests, could sit and listen to that sort of language. So I went to speak to the rector about it.
The rector Tuffler, who had heard it directly. Surely that should have been ringing alarm bells for you about the nature of this man, shouldn't it?
Of course, homophobic attitudes are not acceptable, and that was made perfectly clear to him.
And homophobic attitudes when he uses descriptions like this. I mean, this man is trained to be a priest. You're in charge of him.
Yes. But as I say, I honestly don't remember those phrases, so I can't remember the incident. Undoubtedly, I know there were complaints with regard to language, and, those I put to him.
So many of Jordan's colleagues knew he did not belong within the sanctity of Rome. They were convinced he was unfit to be a priest. But remarkably, little of this made it into the annual reports, which were sent back to the sponsoring diocese and which were the only way the bishop could monitor his trainee priest.
The reports are fairly satisfactory. Obviously, he wasn't the easiest person in community. I do remember that came through once or twice. But that wouldn't necessarily indicate either a paedophile or someone unsuitable on other grounds for ordination.
Jordan's progress in the Catholic priesthood continued unhindered. He was allowed to carry out pastoral duties, including working in schools. He befriended a number of boys between the ages of 9 and 13, again using his knowledge of football and computers to spark their interest. The seminary where Jordan was training knew about the abuse allegations, but did not divulge them to the school or to the parents. For the Beauvais family, Joe Jordan was someone they became very close to.
He was part of the family. He'd become, he used to take Alessandro at home, teach him, so I mean, he was one of us. We used to consider him the bigger brother of Alessandro because, you know, he used to help him with his studies.
We went out in the countryside together. We went camping. We did lots of things together. He bought stuff. We were, you know, he was very attached to me, or how I saw it. I remember the day he had to leave from Rome because he was going back to England. He bought me stuff and he started crying. He didn't want to leave. He didn't want to leave me because he was very attached to me.
We've spoken to some of the boys and their parents who had contact with Joe Jordan when he was here. There is no evidence that abuse took place, although Jordan was using the same strategies to entice boys here as before, and Jordan formed lasting relationships with some of the boys, even taking them on trips abroad. By this time, there was widespread knowledge and concern even within the Catholic Church about child abuse. For the first time, they responded officially with a set of guidelines in 1994. These child protection guidelines made clear there must be a thorough check on all candidates who are being considered for work. The Church was especially concerned about people who may have come before the courts accused of child abuse but been acquitted. The guidelines state, when a person is found not guilty, the matter does not necessarily end there. The man who chaired the working party which came up with these guidelines was Bishop Budd of Plymouth, Jordan's sponsoring bishop. Recalling Jordan's own acquittal, he decided to look again at the case and send him to a clinic which specialised in assessing paedophiles.
I wanted to make sure that he wasn't a paedophile. That's at that stage. So it was the paedophile issues which I'd learnt a lot about. I'd learnt that, for instance, that when a court doesn't convict someone, it doesn't necessarily mean you have no grounds for concern.
So to be clear, these were specialist paedophile experts, were they?
Yes.
Who would have examined and assessed Joe Jordan.
And it was a risk assessment, basically, I was asked him to do, in the light of his personal history.
For Joe Jordan, this was a major problem. It could have ended his career in the church. He desperately had to think of some way round it. Crucially, at just this point, he met Archbishop Ward in Rome and saw an opportunity. In the meeting, Jordan lied and told the Archbishop that his parents were planning to move to Cardiff. He said he wanted to become a priest there instead of in Plymouth. Ward agreed to consider him for selection, but there remained another opportunity to uncover him for the paedophile he was. Archbishop Ward was told by Bishop Budd of his fears concerning Jordan. He sent the Archbishop a letter detailing what he believed should happen.
I said what I was setting up. I said, this is the contact point if you wish to follow that up. Because the Archbishop, as I recall, I think it was on the phone, said, I'll put him through our full screening.
Yes, but what you wanted was something rather different, wasn't it? You were talking about a paedophile assessment centre.
That's right.
And that's what you said in this letter?
That's what I said in the letter, and obviously I couldn't impose that on another diocese, but obviously I shared my concern and why I was going down that road.
It was a specific assessment by experts in paedophile behaviour.
Exactly.
And you even named...
I named the person and the contact at the therapy centre who was organising this for me.
Only weeks after Bishop Budd's letter was sent to Archbishop Ward, Jordan was invited to present himself in Cardiff for selection. Incredibly, the Archbishop had only told one person on that selection panel about Jordan's court case, a local retired psychiatrist. The Archbishop asked him to assess Jordan. They met once for just over 2 hours, and it turned out to be completely different from what Bishop Budd had recommended. In what sense was this an assessment of a potential paedophile? Was it that in any way?
No, it wasn't. It was an extended assessment of a man who wanted to become a priest.
Even worse, the Archbishop held back from the psychiatrist vital information about Joe Jordan. Were you told about a letter from Bishop Budd of Plymouth that he should go to a specialist paedophile assessment centre, a letter that was sent to Archbishop Ward? Were you told about that?
No.
This was a specific warning of a potential risk this man could have paedophile tendencies. You had no knowledge of that, did you? The interview he conducted was a long way from a thorough vetting of Jordan. Have you ever dealt with specifically a man with paedophile tendencies, a man who might abuse children and the psychiatric problems that he would have?
Have I ever treated somebody? No.
You had no expertise in that at all?
No, no expertise in that, no.
We've spoken to the psychiatrist who talked to Joe Jordan. It was nothing like what he wanted. Paedophilia wasn't central to the discussion at all. Sure. He wasn't even qualified in that area.
Yes. I think it's a great shame. Because obviously people have been hurt since, you know.
In the end, Bishop Budd couldn't enforce his recommendations, even though he's one of the Catholic Church's leading advisors on child protection. The structure of the church means that every bishop controls his own individual diocese completely. Ultimately, Archbishop Ward is accountable only to the Pope.
I don't think I could have done more than I actually did in what I stated in that letter. I was as strong as I could be, without being impertinent.
Knowing this now, what do you make of Archbishop Ward and what he did?
I'm not sure I'd want to comment on a brother bishop, but obviously there was some lacks in whatever was done in Cardiff.
It was a terrible mistake that you didn't follow through the recommendation from Bishop Budd, wasn't it?
With hindsight, yes.
Why didn't you do it at the time?
Because I didn't think it was necessary.
You had a recommendation for a clinical assessment of Jordan at a specialist clinic. You sent him to a psychiatrist who knew nothing about that recommendation and had no expertise in paedophilia at all.
I was satisfied with the questioning he presented, and I was quite happy with the results of that.
The results of that were
with hindsight.
You ordained a man who was a paedophile, and you had been recommended that he should go to a specialist clinic. You let a man in that you knew was a potential paedophile.
I did not deliberately let anyone in who was a paedophile, or I wouldn't have laid hands on him. But I did take what I thought was appropriate action at that time.
Jordan returned to his training in Rome, sponsored now by Archbishop Ward. Another chance to detect him had been missed. But on a later trip to Rome, Ward was to receive other warnings about Jordan's behaviour. His fellow students were still so sure he should not become a priest, they put their concerns directly to the Archbishop.
I related some incidents to the Archbishop where Joe had behaved, not in just an inappropriate matter, but he'd bullied other students, including myself. He'd used vile, vicious language. He'd humiliated people in public. It wasn't unchristian of Joe or unpriestly of Joe. It was damn right malign. He concluded the appointment by thanking me for saying what I'd said, and then said that he was wise enough to know what was right for Jordan and what was right for his diocese.
Yet again, a warning had been ignored, a warning that had gone straight to Archbishop Ward. Now the Catholic Church in Wales would have 2 active paedophiles in its ranks. When Jordan arrived in Cardiff in 1996, John Lloyd was still firmly in favour with Archbishop Ward, appearing in a documentary on marriage and speaking on behalf of the Church on the ordination of women.
Our Archbishop would say that if there's any change, he would welcome it. Whatever the Church says, he will do.
But by 1997, the net was closing in on Lloyd. He was questioned by the police about child abuse. At the same time, Archbishop Ward was preparing to ordain Joe Jordan as a deacon, the first real step to priesthood. But the speed of it all was soon causing friction in the diocese. A senior cleric complained.
I simply felt I needed to point out to the Archbishop that in 8 weeks' time he would be standing in church ready to ordain this man and asking the clergy there and the people, do you know him to be worthy? And I wrote to the Archbishop and said, you may know that he's worthy, we don't even know him.
The Archbishop never replied to Ambrose Walsh's letter. Father Walsh remained suspicious, and he had none of the information the Archbishop possessed. Did you know that Bishop Budd of Plymouth had written to Archbishop Ward sometime earlier saying that this man Jordan, that he was warning about him, that he should go to a paedophile assessment centre? Did you know that?
What way would I have known this? Who would have told me this? Nobody in the diocese would know that.
Does it shock you?
Well, nothing shocks me anymore, I'm afraid.
Joe Jordan was ordained as a Catholic priest in early 1998. Just a few weeks later, John Lloyd was in court, accused of child abuse.
Good evening. One of Wales's most prominent Roman Catholic priests has been convicted of
In the end, he faced 2 trials and was finally convicted of rape, buggery and other serious sexual assaults. He received a sentence of 8 years in prison. Archbishop Ward issued a statement expressing his deepest sorrow and shame for the actions of Father Lloyd, and added, the lessons taught by recent experiences have been and are being addressed. By this stage, his diocese had also launched their own child protection guidelines, with a stark reminder of the Church's responsibilities. The worst possible scandal that could befall the Church would be that we knew that there was a problem, but failed to act. Despite the firm commitment in the guidelines to be vigilant, the second paedophile priest remained undetected in the community.
My job here is the same as most of the clergy's job in a busy parish, visiting people, hospitals, old people's homes. We've got a school in the next street, weddings, baptisms, funerals, usual sort of thing.
In fact, there was further reason for concern. Jordan shared this house with other priests. One spotted 2 boys coming out of Jordan's room. In another incident, Jordan was seen hanging around the showers of a sports centre used by a local Catholic school. Both these episodes were reported to another priest in the house. Father John Maguire was a member of the Church's child protection team. He had himself seen a boy emerging from Jordan's room. We wanted to interview Father Maguire, but he refused. However, he did issue a statement to us. In it, he made clear that he had reported the incidents to the Archbishop. In my capacity as parish priest, I verbally informed the Archbishop about Joe Jordan taking boys to his room and about his football activities. He said he did this each time he received a warning, but the Archbishop left it to Father Maguire to deal with, believing Jordan's behaviour was not serious.
I just saw it as immaturity on his part, and I didn't see any danger signals there, no.
Archbishop, that's an incredible statement. You knew about a recommendation earlier from Bishop Budd that he should go to a clinic. You knew that he'd been in court accused of child abuse, and here you were receiving other warnings back in Cardiff of a boy coming out of his room, of him hanging around the showers of a school, and you, personally, did nothing.
I didn't see them as danger signals. I really didn't.
Why not? Why on earth not?
Father Joe was interested in football. Now, when someone makes a complaint that he'd been, I suppose, watching over the shower, I don't know what happened, but it could have meant anything.
Unknown to his fellow priests, Jordan was also taking boys to football matches on his own, breaking child protection guidelines. And he had a new job, chaplain to Cardiff City Football Club.
I'm not the sort of priest who would stand behind my robes and behind my church fittings and not get down to the level of the players. I mean, if you were filming me here on match day, you'd see me shouting, swearing at the referee and carrying on. My loves the game and my love of God and my love of Cardiff City have all come together in one with this role here. And for me, it's a perfect job.
At this crucial point in April of last year, the diocese found itself back in the headlines once more. This time the Archbishop himself was accused of a sexual offence, raping a girl when he was a young priest working in a primary school in the 1960s. But the charges were dropped because of a lack of evidence. He announced at a mass that the cloud hanging over him had now been lifted.
On March the 24th, I was informed that no further action would be taken relating to the allegations made against me on January the 26th. I now look forward to resuming and continuing my full ministry among you.
Jordan, meanwhile, continued in his paedophile activities. He progressed within the church and was made the parish priest in Barry in South Wales. Here he befriended some young boys and took them away on trips and to football matches on his own. For one family whose son he targeted, it was the fact he was a priest that eased their suspicions about the time he was spending with their son.
I did regard it as an honour that the priest wanted to come into our home, and obviously there was the football, which my son was very interested in. My husband would point out to me that he was spending a lot of time with him, and there was some quite heated arguments about this, and my reaction 9 times out of 10 was, for goodness sake, they've just put John Lloyd into prison for being a paedophile. You don't think that there's going to be another one.
When their son fell sick, Joe Jordan seized the opportunity to visit him at home.
While I was leaving the room to make tea, he was indecently assaulting my son. It's in your home, and this just shows the arrogance of this man, that he was prepared to do that. I believe that he felt it was his right to do this. It was his right.
Only a few weeks later, on a day trip into Cardiff, he abused another boy of the same age, just 11 years old. His mother knew afterwards that something was wrong.
He had tears in his eyes. At first he wouldn't tell me what was the matter. It did take me a lot of persuading to get it out of him. He said that Father Joe had sat next to him and put his hand down his shorts. When I tried to get him to emphasise on how he did it, he distinctly showed me with his hand movements that the hand had gone inside my son's boxer shorts.
The boy's mother was devastated by what the priest had done and went to the police. Word of the allegations reached Archbishop Ward. The Archbishop asked to see Jordan and, astonishingly, told him that 2 boys had made allegations against him and who was stopping him working with children. It was a week before he was arrested and gave Jordan a golden opportunity to hide incriminating evidence stored on his computer. Hundreds of pornographic images of young boys downloaded from the internet. Jordan persuaded a friend to hide his computer, and it took the police 5 months to track it down. Jordan was then charged with perverting the course of justice. The Archbishop had completely broken the Church's own child protection guidelines by telling Jordan of the allegations against him.
In our guidelines, we said that people who are under suspicion should not be maybe notified until some basic preliminary investigations have been done, and those are recommended to be done by the statutory authorities, not by the Church.
And you specifically, in those guidelines, say the bishop should not notify the person
Indeed.
Of the central allegations, don't you? What do you make of this, then, that it happened here?
I think it's sad it happened there.
I took immediate action to stop him carrying on in the parish or refereeing football matches or whatever. He was stopped.
But the effect of that, and there were other ways to have stopped him, the effect of that was that he was able to start trying to hide his computer, which had pornographic images of children on it.
That may be so, but I was advised that I had to get him out of the way and put him on administrative leave.
It breached the guidelines. It led to a perversion of the course of justice by approaching Joe Jordan with these allegations.
Well, it's the first time I've heard of that. Truly.
It's another terrible mistake, Archbishop, isn't it?
I don't think that was.
In court, Jordan faced 2 trials. He was found guilty of abusing children and of perverting the course of justice, and he admitted a further count of abusing a boy a decade ago before he was a priest. Just like Father John Lloyd, he received an 8-year jail sentence. Since the sentence 2 weeks ago, there have been increasing calls both from the clergy and commentators for Archbishop Ward to resign.
I cannot see that that any kind of real moves to accountability will take place in this diocese under the present leadership.
This was a disaster that needn't have happened. This was something that needn't have happened if the information had been properly acted on. I think that he's a man who's way out of his depth, and I think that basically he's shown on many occasions that he's incompetent. And I think he's unfit for office.
He should go.
I think so. I think it would be best for him and best for us if he went now.
Archbishop, surely you must take responsibility for what has happened. It is time for you to resign.
I take responsibility for what has happened. I deeply regret what has happened, the pain caused to others, the pain caused to the whole Archdiocese. I regret that. I take responsibility for it. But I am Archbishop, and I have the responsibility to try to ensure that these things don't happen again. If I had acted in bad faith, I would resign immediately. I believe I acted in good faith with the best of intentions, and I see no reason why I should resign my office.
The final decision on the Archbishop's future lies here in the heart of the Catholic Church in Rome. For Archbishop Ward, there's only one man who can force him to go, and that's the Pope. On this programme, we've exposed terrible failings in the makeup of the Church which have left children at risk. But it's those church structures which make Archbishop Ward very powerful. If the Pope fails to act against him, then what's happened under Archbishop Ward of Cardiff could continue. This morning there was a dramatic development. It was directed that a statement from the Archbishop should be read out at every Mass throughout the Archdiocese. It said he had asked the Pope to select his successor. They would then preside jointly over the Archdiocese until the time came for Archbishop Ward to retire. This compromise solution is unlikely to satisfy the families who want the Archbishop to go now. Their lives have been shattered and their faith in the Catholic Church completely destroyed.
I'm angry that the man in that power have done nothing whatsoever to protect any children in the community. In fact, quite the opposite, he's just let a paedophile just run amongst the community.
My actual faith in the establishment has gone, and I will never ever accept a man as a priest again, never respect him automatically because he is a priest. That has gone forever.
You can comment on the issues raised in tonight's programme by visiting our website at bbc.co.uk/panorama. Next week, Life on TV. Just how far will reality television go to get ratings?